Hi everyone. Today we are in conversation with Jim, CEO of Nirmata, creators of Kyverno, the easiest way to implement security and compliance in Kubernetes. Thank you, Jim, for doing this, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sandeep. Jim Bagwadia, co-founder, CEO at Nirmata, like you mentioned, also one of the co-creators and a maintainer of Kyverno. So very happy to be chatting with you. Obviously, very interested and passionate about the whole DevOps and DevSecOps space in Kubernetes.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions because ever since I started using Kyverno, I was just overwhelmed by the simplicity and the depth of, the product basically you guys have thought while creating it actually. So, and luckily after some time I was able to reach you, and now we are recording this. And so the first question would be very, the basic question, what was the root cause or kind of signal in the Kubernetes community or the Kubernetes ecosystem you thought, because OPA was there, but it has it had
Right.
it has certain limitations basically. So you came up with Kyverno and you guys started it. How it, the journey, history, geography, or any sideways if you can introduce.
Yeah, absolutely. So few interesting things there, right? So one interesting story is a lot of companies first, build an open source project,
Hmm.
and then if that project matures, if it takes off, then they try to build a commercial solution around it, right? For
Yep.
us, it was slightly the other way around. Kyverno, came out of our commercial products, what we had built, and my background, my co-founders at Nirmata, Ritesh, Damien, all of us come from a telecom network management background.
Oh,
So we
okay.
were used to kind of building management planes for mission critical, 24/7, always on type of systems, which can
Oh.
never go down, right? So, and
Hmm.
security, of course, has to be a big part of those solutions. So we had built policy engine, and as Kubernetes matured, like this was like with 1.15 and with other kind of releases, we got like things like CRDs, we got features, for dynamic admission controls. And at that time, we saw the opportunity to take what we had built, and we debated the trade-offs for it and decided to open source it and bring it to Kubernetes. But like you said, at that time, Open Policy Agent already existed, right?
Hmm.
So when we looked in the ecosystem, we spoke to a lot of different users, end users. We spoke to, of course, a lot of people in the community, and what we found was that OPA had a lot of adoption from vendors, but not much
Yep.
adoption from end users. And we were
Hmm.
always kind of wondering, okay, the use case seems very clear. Why aren't users adopting this? And the number one reason, the answer we got back was complexity, wasn't kind of too complex to learn, too complex to manage, and everybody wanted to customize policies, do policy as code, not really just use a policy some vendor
Hmm.
gives to them, right? So if you look
Yep.
at the
Exactly.
current state of OPA, I mean, you have like even things like in Azure, or if you look at security products, they've all baked in OPA into their products, but
Hmm.
you have to go through their UI, their console. You can't really do
Exactly.
policy as code. It's very limited, right? The other main thing we saw is there's an opportunity to go beyond. I mean, policies in Kubernetes are very interesting, right? And Kubernetes, you have developers, you have operators, you have security. So policy becomes that common contract across all of these teams. And
Hmm.
what was really required was, if you go to the Kubernetes docs and look at the definition of policy in
Yep.
Kubernetes, a policy is configuration that manages other configuration or behaviors. So manages means more than just validation and enforcing certain rules. You have to be able to mutate, generate, clean up, full lifecycle management,
Full
right?
life cycle has to be there. Exactly.
That's what Kyverno does uniquely. OPA cannot do that, and that's why we felt compelled that we need to build Kyverno, bring it to market, and it's seen some of the popularity that you've seen with the recent trends.
Thank you very much. Actually, I really love it because OPA had, so many moving components, and the biggest nightmare for any DevOps engineers or SRE is that uh, it used to fail a lot during upgrades. And before upgrading, we have to take care of so many things like CRDs needs to be updated and all. But and the biggest part was, even if you can uh, customize the policies, you have to write it in Rego.
Right.
That was the biggest pain point. I mean, these were these some of the biggest pain points for using OPA. But it was sigh of relief. But the moment Kyverno came, I think everybody is jumping on Kyverno, if I'm correct. So that was good. Thank you very much for thinking about it and making it open source so that people
Yes.
can adopt it. And uh, the whole community is, I mean, I think being created around Kyverno now. People are really talking about it, especially here in Bangalore, if I'm
Right.
correct. Yep.
Yes, so we're seeing a lot of momentum, lots of good, feedback from the community, which is driving a lot of our roadmap and other things which
Mm.
we, can talk about too.
Cool, 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 cool. Thank you very much. So this was kind of a history, and if we look at the current scenario in Kubernetes, security and compliance, because as Kubernetes adoption has grown uh, multifold, so does the security and compliance, because everybody is deploying via Kubernetes, and there are n number of loopholes and things are coming up in security and compliance. So where do you think, I mean, Kyverno is fitting in and uh, existing in this ecosystem?
Yeah, so if you think about the last, 5 to 10 years of what has happened,
Mm,
even beyond before Kubernetes, right? If you look at the
mm,
whole DevOps to DevSecOps to now
mm,
platform engineering kind of trends, um, we've done a great job as an industry, as a community, of being able to automate a lot of the operations, right?
mhm.
So with
Yep, yep,
infrastructure as code, with tools like whether it's Terraform or OpenTofu or Pulumi or other cloud formation, there's so many ways to automate
yep,
infrastructure
mm,
and go to infrastructure as code, right? But if you
mm,
look at the big problem in the space, today security is pretty much broken. Every 2 weeks we see new major headlines,
yeah,
alerts,
exactly.
major issues. Central security is not a Kubernetes. They're not Kubernetes experts, right? They're not cloud
Yep.
native experts. They need to focus on runtime threats. They need to focus on vulnerabilities, other things. And if you
Mm,
look at the elephant in the room, it's misconfigurations, right? Every
yep.
security incident, or like at least 90% of security incidents, are because of misconfigurations.
You have answered it correctly. Actually, the misconfiguration.
Yeah, so and Kubernetes adds that layer of complexity because in every Kubernetes configuration, there's something that, security has to do, something that ops has to do, something that developers have to do. So how do you manage all of this across all these teams and concerns, right? So to
Mm,
me, just like IAC has automated operations, policy
mm,
as code or PSE can automate some levels of security management for misconfigurations. And that's what's
mm,
very exciting to me if you look at the trend. I feel the next, 5, 10 years, the focus will be how do we bake in security into the platform? How do we
mhm,
make it part of our platform engineering teams so that for developers the experience is great. They get the golden paths, they get the guardrails, they get the checks in a proactive manner. Central security looks at clean production environments, but this
mhm.
only can be done, in security. There's this term called shift left, right?
Yeah,
Where a lot of
exactly. I was
people
coming
are
to that.
yeah, a lot of people are saying move everything left because security cannot deal with so many alerts and findings and things.
Yep.
We are, the way we are thinking of it is shift down security. And that's a
Mhm,
very, new approach, which is only enabled by Kubernetes and platform engineering. We can move some of this configuration management headache and the nightmare that exists today. We can solve that by moving the concerns down into the platform, by taking care of, things like base images, policy, writing policy as code to take care of configurations. And if you think about Kubernetes, right, it's not just, stock Kubernetes. Nobody just runs Kubernetes. You need
exactly.
Kubernetes plus like half a dozen other packages at least, and then other things like Istio, or if you're doing AI ML, you might be running Kubeflow or Kubre or
Swiftly.
one of
Yeah.
these packages. And
ML
each
plan.
one of these has configurations and potential for misconfiguration. So all of these things need to be secured, and Kyverno, being native to Kubernetes, can do a great job across all of these layers and allows the
Hmm.
platform engineering team to create the right policy as code.
Exactly. So, because earlier what used to happen, I mean, when we used to create all these Kubernetes clusters and we used to think about the Kubernetes security later, but I think the shift down or shift left approach really has to be there, because we cannot really afford to expose our secrets or networks or images to the threats, because nowadays it's all, everything is there. So that is really good. And uh, shifting left or kind of shifting down to the developers, because in every organization, if you see the DevOps or the platform engineers or the SREs, they are in less numbers. They cannot really uh, scrape through the information all the time. They need something which can work whenever they are, you're not looking at. So kind of
Right.
something which, even, I mean, like you mentioned, mutates and then take care of itself, kind of bump the number of things if they are not correct. So that is really, I mean, relief for the DevOps teams and all. So yeah, that was good. And what do you think? I mean, in the next 5 years, as you see, Kubeflow, people have started running Kubeflow, ML Flow, and n number of tools on Kubernetes. So the AI is coming on Kubernetes. Do you think the responsibility is growing on Kyverno's part, and how you think I mean, the product will enhance itself in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So there's more and more, integrations we're building, not just in
Mm-hmm,
Kubernetes, but one of the things we heard from platform engineering teams is, look, we are managing pipelines, right? So we
mm-hmm,
have, like, whether it's infrastructure as code pipelines, or pipelines for, like, even LLMs, pipelines for managing applications, whatever it might be, whether you're dealing with teams of data scientists, developers, others.
mm-hmm,
How do we now enable policy checks in our pipeline itself? So last
mm-hmm,
KubeCon US, we launched Kyverno JSON, which basically
mm-hmm.
allows you to apply Kyverno policies outside of Kubernetes or anywhere, right?
Okay.
So with that, at Nirmata, we have built a lot of integrations with different tooling. So you can do things like Docker file scanning, Terraform scanning, even
Mm-hmm,
scanning, other payloads, like we're working with integrating with services. And we will be, and talking more about this in terms of whether you're running ECS or Lambda or, Google Autopilot, shouldn't matter, right? So as a
mm-hmm,
platform team, you want to enable all these services. You want to give your developers the best flexibility and choice. And you might
mm-hmm,
even you have a mix of Kubernetes clusters, code pipelines, as well as cloud services. So the vision that we have is that Kyverno was that unified, policy engine, and then Nirmata provides the unified governance layer across all of this for a platform engineering team. So that's what we're working, kind of very quickly towards, and seeing a
okay.
lot of great feedback both from the community, from our commercial customers, who are using, of course, not just Kyverno, but what we build on top of Kyverno at Nirmata, again, to provide the right building blocks for these platform engineering teams to have that full unified view, as well as manage collaboration workflows across developers, operations, security. Because you might have, it's very common in a large organization that some policies might be written by the ops team, other policies are written by security, maybe you have other policies which are written by the app team, some by finance, who care about
Mm-hmm,
FinOps and cost management. So how
mm-hmm.
do you make sure that the right approvals are in place? How do you make sure your policies, when they're deployed onto your clusters, nobody's tampering with them? How do you make sure which version of policy is running where?
The
And
common
that's
ground
what
has to be there.
exactly. So Nirmata
Mm-hmm,
provides that control plane for governance across your
mm-hmm.
clusters, cloud services, and pipelines.
Oh, this is good. I mean, kind of becoming cloud agnostic or the provider agnostic. So you can just single point of, I mean, management you can do. So you don't have to,
Absolutely.
I mean, most of the people, I mean, a lot of people, they don't really like to work on the CLI. So this is good actually. And do you think, I mean, this product can be converted into a full-fledged Kyverno LLM or something? Because you can train on any client's vulnerabilities and n number of things, and then uh, learn from them and implement automatically. Do you think there is a possibility?
Yes, I mean, clearly there is an opportunity to,
Hmm.
provide tools, provide the right way with
Hmm.
AI to make it easier not only to author policies, but make it
Hmm.
easier to, because each Kubernetes cluster may be custom in different
Yep, yep. Hmm.
environments, right? So how do you kind of, look at the posture and then recommend the right, type of policies? So those are
Hmm.
directions we're looking at very closely at Nirmata, and we will be, talking more about those and
Oh,
launching
cool.
products around that. But you're spot on because there is a big opportunity there, of course.
Nice. Okay, cool. I'm glad that that is in in your roadmap. So I'll be looking forward for it. Kyverno AI someday. Ah,
Yes,
cool.
something to that nature. Yeah, for sure.
Cool, cool, cool. So, I mean, I have seen myself, I mean, so many companies adopting Kyverno, open source or commercial.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, what was the best scenario somebody has tackled, or the craziest way of handling thing with Kyverno? Because I I mean, when I was in Razorpay, we have done n number of things which I mean nobody could even think about it without Kyverno. I mean, not without Kyverno. With Kyverno, we have done so
Mhm.
many things. I mean, we have restricted n number of things and developers and customized so many things. So, do you have some crazy stories to share?
Yeah, I mean, again, they're very unique stories and very
Hmm.
interesting. I don't know if I'd call them crazy, but certainly pushes the boundary of what,
Yeah, yeah,
tools
exactly.
and Kyverno and others can do. So one very interesting thing we hear about is when a lot of folks switch from OPA to Kyverno. With maybe OPA, they might have 4 or 5 policies, some that
Hmm.
somebody wrote or they found from the community. As soon as they go to Kyverno, like you're describing, what we start hearing is they will get to like 50, 60, maybe even hundreds of policies very quickly, right? Because
Hmm.
Kyverno makes it easy to write and manage policies. It makes it easy to kind of scale up and do more. And there's just more and more use cases that emerge, right? So
Hmm.
one very interesting thing, and there was a recent, presentation that we did with one of our partners, Cost, is
Hmm.
even policies for managing cost budgets proactively, right? So how do
Okay.
you, if you're running a large scale cluster, you're maybe providing namespaces as a service, how do you make sure that one, user doesn't take up like, and it's very important, especially for AI ML workloads. You want to share GPUs, you want to make sure that people are within their quota, and suddenly you're not paying like millions of dollars for a cloud bill, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody just spun up a job and didn't understand the impacts of that. So we see several policies, being created, managed, and we're working with certain customers on that. We also see things like automating, obviously, multi-tenancy, micro-segmentation, so making sure there's interzoning rules, things like that being automated. So more and more, it's at this intersection of security and operations and
Hmm.
automating security concerns inside of Kubernetes because Kubernetes workloads come and go very fast, right?
Yep.
And things are constantly changing. You cannot react to this manually. You cannot do this, and Kyverno becomes that toolbox where you can now automate a lot of security concerns, right? You can generate roles,
Exactly.
role bindings, network policies, even quotas. You can check with other external sources. So there's a ton of flexibility in how you kind of put together these workflows. So, like you said, we see more and more complex workflows that people are
Hmm.
fully automating using policy as code now.
Exactly. So because as you see, I mean the micro segmentation and shifting left and network policy creation, the quotas. This used to be a thing. If we see 4 years back, people started this thing with the cloud providers. But
Mhm.
this was, I think, the need of the hour because you cannot just configure 4 or 5 policies on the organization level on the network. Sorry, the cloud provider side, and then wait for them to be breached or kind of. Uh, because you need the micro monitoring kind of thing on the Kubernetes, because Kubernetes, I mean, it works really faster, scale descaling, and it happens on the go. So you cannot just be relying on the cloud providers, because and
Absolutely.
it is on the kind of umbrella policy. You cannot do the grassroots level or kind of the minute level of things covered up in those policies basically.
Yep.
So that was good.
Yeah, that makes sense. And more, every organization is providing self-service to developers, right? So they
Yeah.
want you have multiple developer teams in a larger organization. You want to provide
Hmm.
self-service. So to provide that self-service, you need security baked in, and that's where again that
Hmm.
shift down security becomes really important. It has to be built into the platform for
Yep, yep.
self-service, to succeed. Otherwise, you're going to have chaos across your teams and applications.
I think nowadays companies are building two kind of products. I mean, the company is building product for their customers and their develop DevOps observability or kind of the productivity teams. They are building the platforms for the internal customers, and I mean both the products has to be on par. Then only the tech company can uh, excel in their way. Do you think this is the correct way?
Absolutely, right. So the companies who have succeeded, and today we're calling this platform engineering, but it's not a new
Hmm.
concept, right? We've been
It has been
building,
always it has always been there.
right, right. So, but it's nice to have the term and the focus around it. And what we're seeing is the companies who invest in that developer experience, right? I was talking to one large company where it takes them maybe 10 days right now for even like the basic onboarding for a developer, right? That's a
Hmm.
lot of time, that developers end up just with process, with other things. If you could cut
Hmm.
that down to, minutes, which can be done with the right automation, with the right guardrails
Hmm.
baked in, with policy as code for that automation in real time, then I think it becomes very compelling. And what we've been building towards for infrastructure as code, now combining that with policy as code, that's when it kind
Hmm.
of leads to that magic layer, which is what every business wants to get to now.
Cool, cool. Nice. Thank you. I think I only had these many questions, and I think I'm out of questions, and that's what we agreed upon. So, any word of wisdom uh, before we stop the recording?
Yeah, just from, I guess what I see in the space and working with a lot of, folks and projects. So more and more, of course, it's interesting. Kubernetes is extensible. It
Hmm.
provides the building blocks for building internal platforms, right? But what we've seen is in CNCF, if you look at the full community, there's about 100 plus different projects. So it can be complex for people to understand where to start, what to choose, how to build your own
Hmm.
platforms on Kubernetes, right?
Hmm.
So the only kind of thing that I'll leave you with there is the trend that we see evolving is there's patterns like GitOps and IAC which have become very powerful, right? But there's
Hmm.
also policy as code, which we believe has to be part of that formula. And that
Hmm.
is what, again, unlocks the developer productivity, gives you a huge boost in security and compliance, and leads to that next level of automation. So, certainly, IAC, PAC plus GitOps on top of Kubernetes, that to me is like the recipe for success today.
Cool. That was good actually, and I'll try to follow that exercise in my day-to-day work. But thank you very much for doing this. I'm sure we'll have follow-up conversation around it. But till then, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.